In April of 2018, a single revolver sold at auction for $1.84 million. Not a machine gun, not a military prototype. A single revolver made in 1847, before the Civil War even started. That sale rewrote the record books, and it is not even the only firearm on this list that has crossed the seven-figure mark. Today, we are counting down the 10 rarest guns ever made. The pistols and rifles that museums fight over, that auction houses build entire events around, and that most gun owners will never hold in their lifetime. If you enjoy deep dives into gun history and collecting, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. Number 10. The Henry Repeating Rifle. We start with the rifle that changed the rules of warfare before the Civil War had even ended. The Henry rifle, patented in 1860, was one of the first practical lever-action repeating rifles in the world. A single soldier carrying a Henry could fire 16 rounds without reloading, at a time when most opponents were still working a single-shot musket one round at a time. Confederate soldiers reportedly called it that damned Yankee rifle you could load on Sunday and shoot all week. Production numbers were tiny by today's standards. Roughly 14,000 were ever made, and only a small fraction survive in collectible condition today. Original Henry rifles with matching serial numbers and clear provenance now regularly sell in the high 5 and low 6 figures at major auction houses. What makes this gun rare isn't just the number built, it's the number that survived. These rifles were carried hard, used hard, and often discarded once better technology came along. A clean, all-original Henry today is a genuine needle in a haystack. Number 9. The Colt Paterson. Before there was a Colt single-action army, before there was a Colt Python, there was the Colt Paterson, Samuel Colt's very first production revolver, manufactured in Paterson, New Jersey, starting in 1836. This was the gun that proved a revolving cylinder pistol could actually be manufactured at scale, and it laid the foundation for every Colt that came after it. Colt's first company actually went bankrupt in 1842, and production of the Paterson stopped after only a few thousand units were ever built across all variations. Samuel Colt himself would not build another revolver for years until a new contract with the U.S. government brought him back into the business. Because so few survive today, most estimates put surviving examples in the low hundreds. A documented, all-original Colt Paterson in good condition can bring anywhere from $200,000 to well over $500,000 depending on configuration and history. It is, in a very real sense, the ancestor of every modern revolver. Number 8. The Gatling Gun. Not every gun on this list is a handgun or a rifle. The Gatling gun, patented by Richard Gatling in 1861, was the first practical rapid-fire weapon in history. A hand-cranked, multi-barrel design that could fire hundreds of rounds per minute, decades before the true automatic machine gun existed. Full, original, operational Gatling guns from the 19th century are almost never available to private collectors because most surviving examples are already locked into museum collections, military academies, or government-owned collections. When an authentic original does surface at a major firearms auction, bidding routinely climbs into 6 figures, and complete carriage-mounted examples with original tooling have sold for considerably more. What makes the Gatling gun historically important isn't just its rarity, it's that it represents the exact turning point where warfare shifted from single-shot combat to sustained rapid fire, a shift that would define every conflict that followed it. Number 7. The Sharps, 1859, bird and sharpshooter rifle. During the Civil War, the Union Army created special sharpshooter regiments under Colonel Hiram Verdon, and the rifle they were issued was the Sharps Model 1859, a breech-loading rifle that was dramatically more accurate than the standard muzzle loaders most soldiers carried. These sharpshooters were trained to hit man-sized targets from 600 yards or more, an almost unheard-of range for the era. Original Burton contract Sharps rifles with verified military inspection markings are extremely scarce today. Many were used hard in combat and never survived the war in serviceable condition, and Sharps records from the period are incomplete, which makes documentation even more valuable to collectors. A verified, well-documented Burton sharpshooter Sharps rifle in strong original condition can command well into six figures at auction, with truly exceptional, fully provenanced examples pushing higher. Collectors don't just pay for the rifle, they're paying for a direct link to one of the most elite units of the Civil War. Number 6. The Spencer Repeating Rifle. The Spencer repeating rifle, adopted by the Union Army starting in 1863, was one of the first repeating rifles ever issued on a large scale by a national military. It held 7 rounds in a tube magazine in the buttstock, and soldiers who carried it could fire dramatically faster than anyone using a standard single-shot rifle of the period. Abraham Lincoln personally tested a Spencer rifle on the White House lawn before approving it for wider military use, a detail that collectors and historians still talk about today. Despite over 200,000 Spencers eventually being produced across the war years, early production examples, cavalry carbine variants, and rifles with documented unit history remain genuinely hard to find in top condition. Because ownership records connecting a specific rifle to a specific regiment or soldier are rare, a Spencer with solid, provable history can sell for many times what a plain, undocumented example would bring, sometimes the difference between a few $1,000s and well over $50,000. Number 5. The Kentucky Long Rifle. Long before repeating rifles existed, American gunsmiths on the frontier were hand-building the Kentucky long rifle, sometimes called the Pennsylvania long rifle, depending on where it was made. These rifles were built one at a time by individual craftsmen, often with hand-carved stocks and hand-engraved brass fittings. No two ever exactly alike, because every single one was essentially a custom firearm. True Kentucky long rifles are among the hardest guns in American history to authenticate. Collectors study the individual signature style of specific gunsmiths the way art collectors study brushstrokes, because a rifle attributed to a well-known frontier gunsmith can be worth vastly more than an unattributed example. Exceptional, fully documented Kentucky long rifles from famous gunsmithing families have sold at auction for well over $100,000. It's a reminder that rarity in the gun world isn't always about production numbers. Sometimes it's about the simple fact that a piece was never mass-produced in the first place. Number 4. The Winchester, 1 of 1,000. (1873). Here is one of the strangest marketing stories in firearms history. When Winchester built the Model 1873 rifle, every barrel was individually test-fired for accuracy. Out of every 100 barrels tested, the single best performing one was pulled aside and stamped 1 of 1,000. Winchester's way of telling customers this exact rifle had outshot 99 others just like it. Out of more than 720,000 standard Model 1873 rifles ever built, only around 132 were ever marked 1 of 1,000. In the 1950s, these rifles could be found for around $1,000 each. Collectors largely ignored the special markings for decades, assuming they were just a sales gimmick. That changed completely. In May of 2026, a rare early 1 of 1,000 rifle with a silver band sold at Rock Island Auction Company for $793,125. Top examples in the finest original condition are now valued well into 6 figures, with some references pricing pristine examples as high as $200,000 or more. If you ever come across an old Winchester lever action with barrel markings you don't recognize, do not clean it, do not touch it. get it in front of an actual antique firearms appraiser first. Number 3. The Colt Single Action Army. Everybody recognizes the Colt Single Action Army, the classic six-shooter of the American West. But most people have never heard of the single rarest variation Colt ever produced, the pinched frame Single Action Army. This unusual variant is only found on civilian Colt Single Action Army revolvers, with serial numbers below 200, built before mid-July of 1873. Essentially, the very first handful of guns off the very first production run, before Colt had even finalized the design. The rear sight sits in a slightly different position than every Single Action Army built afterward, a tiny design detail that only lasted a matter of weeks before Colt corrected it. Because the total production window was so short, nobody knows with certainty how many pinched frame Colts still exist today. When one surfaces with a verifiable serial number in that range, it doesn't just sell as a rare gun. It sells as a piece of the exact moment the most famous revolver in American history was born. Documented examples have sold for well into 6 figures. The Colt Buntline Special. Legend says that in 1876, a writer named Ned Buntline gifted 5 extra-long barreled Colt single-action Army revolvers to famous lawmen of the Old West, including Wyatt Earp 12-inch barrels on a gun that normally wore a barrel half that length. Historians still argue about how much of that story is true, but the name stuck, and the Buntline Special became one of the most mythologized guns in Western history. One of the rarest known examples, a near-new 1 of 2 Colt Buntline Special, sold at Rock Island Auction Company for $386,000. That number reflects just how thin the surviving population of genuine, documented Buntline configuration Colts really is. Plenty of later reproductions and long-barreled customs exist, but the handful of guns with real, traceable ties to the original story sit in an entirely different tier of value. It's a perfect example of how, in the world of rare firearms, legend and provenance can multiply a gun's value far beyond what its mechanics alone would ever justify. Number 1. The Colt Walker Danish Sea Captain. And now, the most valuable single firearm ever sold at public auction, the Colt Model 1847. Walker, known specifically as the Danish Sea Captain. The Colt Walker was born from a partnership between Texas Ranger Captain Samuel Walker and Samuel Colt himself, designed as the most powerful handgun that could be produced at the time. It weighed 4.5 pounds unloaded, fired a massive 60-grain black powder charge, and remains the heaviest powder load ever put into a production revolver. Only about 1,100 were ever made, split between a military contract and a small civilian run. This particular example carries an extraordinary story. It was originally purchased in New York City in 1847 by a Danish sea captain named Niels Hansen, and it was passed down through his family for generations. Remarkably, it survived with a handwritten record of its own history, penned by Samuel Colt himself, that had accompanied the gun since the day it was first sold. It is the only known cased revolver surviving from the original production run. In April of 2018, at Rock Island Auction Company, bidding opened at $650,000 and climbed steadily until only 2 bidders remained, trading $25,000 increases back and forth. When the hammer finally fell, the price stood at $1,840,000. A new world record for any firearm ever sold at auction. That is the story of the single most valuable gun ever sold, a revolver that survived a world war buried in a garden, carrying a note in the handwriting of the man who invented it. So there you have it, the 10 rarest guns ever made, from a Civil War sharpshooter rifle to a revolver that spent years buried in a Danish garden to escape the Nazis. Let me know in the comments which one of these surprised you the most, and if you've ever come across an old family gun and wondered if it might be worth more than you think. Tell us about it below. If you enjoyed this one, hit subscribe and turn on notifications.